The story begins with an unexpected earthquake in Japan. A young man gives his life to push a little girl away from falling debris. Trapped under the rubble, he thinks about his approaching death. At that moment, he finally understands the protective instinct that his parents, who died in the same tragedy, felt. However, instead of entering the afterlife, he wakes up to a blinding white light. Opening his eyes, he is amazed to discover that his hands are tiny, and the face of his supposedly dead father leaning over his head. While the tearful woman hugs him tenderly. She lovingly names him Kai and he thanks him for being born. Struck with bewilderment, Kai touches his face and realizes he has been reborn as a baby. As if time itself had turned back, the tender scene ended abruptly. When his mother, weakly taking her husband's hand, calls him Akihiko and begs him to protect their newborn child, the exorcist suddenly comes closer and orders the father to step aside so that the spirit sealing ritual can be performed. Beginning, the baby looks around and sees serious figures sitting in a circle around the room. This left him unsettled by the oppressive atmosphere. One of the exorcists sternly reminds Akihiko of their grave duty. He explains that since ancient times, catastrophic disasters have been caused by malevolent beings. To protect humanity from further destruction, it is necessary to isolate the most powerful of these threats. The threat is posed by the demonic god Duma, who has inhabited the body of a newborn. Although the father vehemently objects to the prohibitive cost, ritual, the servants hold it. With a final sad apology, he releases his wife's hand. When a glowing star-shaped formation appears beneath them, a dangerous summoning ritual begins. His mother, with tears in her eyes, asks her son to forgive her. The baby froze in shock. The next moment, Kai was surrounded by dark energy, and an ominous voice emerged from the shadows, mocking the baby's unnatural perception. A being calling itself Duma announces its intention to take possession of the child's body, and forces him to watch as the killing curse begins to drain the strength from his mother. He is terrified by the thought of losing his parents again so soon after finding them. Kai recalls his past life. He remembers the harrowing day of his parents' funeral, when the mourners pitied him and his younger brother. They were abandoned after their mother died, saving a stranger. Overcome with grief, the young boy desperately opened the coffin's viewing window. He cried and asked why their parents abandoned them. Returning to the present, Kai prevents the same tragedy from happening again. As the black energy coils around him, he fights back with pure will, determined this time to save his mother. Against all odds, he pushes the dark entity back to defeat the demon with the extraordinary power of the infant spirit. Explosions of disbelief echo throughout the room as the deadly curse suddenly disappears. Akihiko rushes to his wife, anxiously checking to see if she's hurt. She assures him she's fine. Although she still senses the dark magic sealed within their son, the ritual was successful. But somehow a fatal casualty was avoided. An elder named Lord Akaika stands up, completely incredulous, and calls this event unprecedented. He explains that a baby possessed by an evil spirit is naturally driven to curse and kill its own mother. This is especially true when the spirit represents the greatest threat, such as the one in Duma. Fearing that the baby might release uncontrollable hidden power at any moment, the elder insists on the child's immediate destruction. But Akihiko steps forward with unwavering determination, not allowing anyone to touch his son. Enraged by Akaika's demand to destroy, a violent outburst of anger erupts from him. Duma exclaims, and a terrifying dark aura spreads through the room. The exorcists panic, preparing to attack. The Duma threatens to destroy them all, but Kai sternly orders him to stop. At that moment, the dark energy rushes back into him. Duma is completely confused, unable to understand why his immense strength can't overcome a newborn. At the same time, Kai understands that his will is strong enough to easily contain Duma's outbursts of anger. Undeterred, Akaika declares that he is willing to put his life on the line by demanding Kai's execution. But Akihiko categorically rejects this. Hanzian intervenes to calm the escalating conflict. He reminds the council of the old summoning customs, explaining that they must watch Kai for 7 years until the curse wears off. Akaika bitterly states that Hanzian has become weak after the birth of his daughter, but Hanzian calmly asks him to put his personal emotions aside. Later, while Kai is resting, Duma continues to bother him with telepathic messages. Annoyed by the constant voice in his head, Kai decides to ignore it. Realizing that this is not the mind of an ordinary baby, Duma begins to doubt who he really is. The psychological confrontation ends when Akihiko returns after being sent. She quickly shares her concerns with him, saying that she felt light magic from Kai for a moment. When the dark aura disappeared, Akihiko admitted that he noticed it too, noting that possessing both light and dark magical properties at the same time is completely unheard of. He understands that Kai may one day grow into a truly outstanding person. For peaceful years pass. A television news report details a recent spirit attack, praising local exorcists for their prompt response and preventing serious serious damage, urging citizens to remain vigilant against supernatural dangers. Now Kai lives in a different version of Tokyo, a world ruled entirely by magic, where people constantly fight supernatural creatures called demon spirits. While Kai watches the broadcast, Akihiko jokingly teases him about being so engrossed in the exorcism news. Kai speaks proudly of his family's heritage, says he wants to study hard and become a great protector like his parents. Sitting next to him, Akihiko calmly warns the boy of the mortal danger of their work, hoping to protect him from such a dangerous future. However, Kai remains adamant, stating that he wants to become strong enough to protect his family when needed. Pretending to be distracted to avoid another lecture, he quickly excuses himself and goes outside to play. As the boy leaves, his mother notices him and politely reminds him to be careful in the garden. Watching Kai leave, Akihiko feels relieved by his son's innocent behavior. He tells his wife that he often worries that the boy feels burdened by the reputation of one of the 7 great families of exorcists. Meanwhile, Kai crosses the pond in the garden, making sure that he was completely out of sight of the house. Duma interrupts his solitude with telepathy, mockingly asking if he is going to begin his usual secret ritual again. The demon god jokingly threatens to take control of his body again. This made Kai sigh in irritation. He calmly ignored the warning, reminding the creature that now he can almost instinctively suppress her attempts at possession. Unable to break the boy's firm will, Duma materializes outside his body, suddenly appearing as a young human girl. She smirks at him. He then warns Kai not to become overconfident just because his body's resistance has improved since infancy. Reflecting on their strange relationship, Kai recalls how many attempts at possession he had experienced during this time. Years. From infancy, Duma used absurd excuses such as a feeling of satiety or just boredom. She tried to take control of his body. Even during ordinary moments, like when he was learning to crawl, she continued to bother him. However, Kai eventually got used to pushing away her minor attacks, and he happily notes that her attempts have become less frequent lately. The Duma immediately ridicules his self-confidence, promising to strike the moment he shows weakness. Despite these threats, she still holds his legs while he does abdominal exercises. They even scold him when he loses his rhythm. They find it funny. Kai remarks that for a man who constantly threatens to steal his body, she is surprisingly useful. Duma stubbornly rejects the idea that she is helping, claiming that she is only waiting for him to get tired so she can take matters into her own hands. Ignoring her excuses, Kai sincerely thanks her for staying with him. He admits that he often feels lonely and frustrated because he still can't properly control his magic. Since he hides his physical training so as not to disturb his parents, her presence makes the grueling exercises easier. The drama, torn by conflicting feelings of sincere gratitude, remains silent. Moving on to push-ups, Kai jokingly complains that they are distracting and too heavy, and that they put extra strain on his back. Suddenly, Duma covers his mouth with his hand and orders him to remain completely silent. Sensing immediate danger, she lowers her voice to a whisper and warns him that someone is watching them. Staring intently into the nearby bushes, Kai notices a Shikigami scout spying on them and wonders who sent the magical tracker. For what reason? Duma casually remarks that the spying Shikigami was likely sent by someone involved in the sealing ritual. She adds that its secret master must be fascinated by Kai's unusual existence, because he completely escaped the death curse and retained his self-awareness while carrying her soul within him. Kai silently complains that the spy has recently begun to appear much more frequently and has become a daily nuisance. Changing the subject, Duma jokingly reminds him that his test to measure magical power is scheduled for the next day. This suggests that the spy's reaction to the results will be very funny. The next day, Kai and Akihiko meet with the doctor to find out the test results. The man solemnly explains that the boy's magical power cannot be measured. It describes how the test reagent typically changes color to indicate the potency level. The red color indicates an extremely rare case, occurring only once in 10 million. However, the sample taken from the child remained completely colorless and transparent, which allowed the doctor to conclude that it was magical, virtually absent. Since magical potential usually develops by age 3, the diagnosis is considered definitive. Depressed by this news, Kai believes that he has no talent and will never become an exorcist. Ignoring his father's desperate insistence that there must be another explanation, he runs away into the forest to deal with his despair alone. Unbeknownst to Kai, Shikigami silently watches his every move. Deep down, Duma bursts out laughing. He was very amused by how adults were completely unaware of his true abilities. Before she accidentally reveals too much information, Kai interrupts her conversation telepathically, asking if the spy is still following her. She confirms that the stalker is nearby. Doma adds that the hidden master has likely heard of the devastating diagnosis of zero magic. She explains that the Shikigami master mistakenly believes Kai is helpless and had already taken action. Suddenly, a huge demonic spirit appears right behind. His fear grips Kai as he begins to think how a deadly monster managed to penetrate their family's territory. Ignoring his panic, Duma physically materializes and declares that the time has come to unlock his true potential. She extends her hand to him. A burning stream of energy erupted from his head, penetrating his entire body. She explains that using witchcraft usually requires engraving certain magical formulas on a person's body. To avoid this process, she directly imparts to him the knowledge of Reiku's powerful lightning technique and orders him to defeat the approaching creature. Still bound by the doctor's diagnosis, Kai desperately insists that he doesn't have the magic to perform the spell. When the monstrous spirit attacks, Duma cruelly provokes it. She asks if his vow to protect his parents and his willpower that easily rejected her demonic influence were just empty words. Strike. According to her, Kai sprinkles porridge. He gritted his teeth and abandoned all excuses. Driven by the need to protect what was important to him, he gestured toward Beast. With unwavering determination, he unleashes a lightning technique. A blinding stream of pure electrical energy erupts from his palm, completely obliterating the demonic spirit. Seeing the destructive force, Duma laughs at the absurdity of what is happening. Doctors say he has no talent. Recognizing its truly immeasurable power, she proudly declares that she will watch his inevitable rise to fame as an unprecedented exorcist. Shortly after the explosion, Akihiko and several other exorcists gather at the site of the destruction. After examining the traces, they confirm that a demon spirit has entered, but the scale of the destruction puzzles them, and it is difficult to believe that this is the work of a single monster. Such damage. From behind a nearby tree, Kai and Duma secretly observe the investigation. Duma gently nudges the boy and asks why he's hiding such immense power from his parents. Kai quickly silences her, explaining that revealing his true power would cause a huge and unnecessary uproar. Kai quietly leaves the scene. However, unbeknownst to Kai, Akihiko easily notices his son sneaking away. Smiling to himself, he realizes the boy possesses incredible power, far exceeding all his expectations. Later, at home, Kai paces the street nervously, lost in thought. Duma mocks him for fleeing the scene, but remains concerned about the investigation. Their conversation is interrupted when Akihiko approaches, pretending to know nothing, and asks if his son heard a powerful explosion in the courtyard. Feigning ignorance, Kai denies knowing anything. Incident. Using a dangerous event as a turning point, his parents say the threat has come too close to their home. Despite his recent performance in Zero Magic, he is asked if he has the determination to continue, then announced that his special training as an exorcist would begin immediately. A few days later, Kai stands nervously in his family's large private dojo. Doma hovers beside him, impressed that a renowned family of exorcists has such an impressive training hall in their own home. Noticing the boy's unusual silence, she asks why he is so tense about finally achieving his dream. Before he can give a coherent answer, Akihiko enters the room with a new woman. He proudly introduces her as Kagami, his son's official exorcism instructor. Akihiko explains that finding a tutor capable of unlocking Kai's hidden potential was extremely difficult. However, he chose Kagami because she had rare experience teaching nomadic children. Before leaving the dojo, his father gives him a small good luck charm, explaining, "This proves that he will always look after his children." Son. Left alone, Duma jokingly asks if the boy is sad about his father's departure. Kai ignores her and strengthens his resolve to begin training. However, when Kai turns to face his new instructor, he's surprised to see Kagami lying face down in a perfect deep bow. She nervously asks him to treat her well and, oddly, offers herself as a human punching bag for his punching and kicking practice. Utterly confused by her submissive demeanor, Kai politely asks her to raise her head. He explains that he really wants to learn how to be an exorcist from the very basics, and respectfully asks her to teach him properly. Hearing his polite request, Kagami is caught off guard and accidentally blurts out that he really is a cursed child. Frightened by her own mistake, she quickly covered herself. He apologizes profusely for using such a discriminatory term. Inside the company, she falls into a complete panic. Due to severe trauma she suffered in the past while working with children vessels, she sees them as frightening, unbalanced monsters. Because of this, she is deathly afraid of her polite new friend. Student. She is still haunted by the memories of the unbearable humiliation she once endured at the hands of the children. Kagami steels herself. Knowing that her new student is the host of the supreme demon god Doma, she decides to be on guard, so that she could fulfill the true, hidden purpose of her mission. Overcoming her fear, she takes out an information board and explains in detail the three main principles of an exorcist's work: body, technique, and mind. She explains that body refers to basic martial arts techniques for developing endurance. Technique is the the process of transforming magic into one of the 5 elements: wind, fire, earth, lightning, or water. Mind refers to rare, specialized techniques that directly shape the user's soul. Since the boy's magic stat was officially 0, she gently tells him to focus only on physical martial arts training. At the moment, other principles are not possible since their manifestation requires active magic. When she asks if he has any questions, Kai enthusiastically raises his hand and asks to see the magic of the elements in action. Although with some reluctance, Kagami decides to play along, extending her hand and quietly chanting a spell. A bright, flickering flame instantly appears in her palm. Totally enchanted by this exhibition, the boy carefully examines her hand from all sides, sincerely amazed that he sees real fire magic so close. Suddenly, Duma appears next to him and loudly mocks him for being impressed by a tiny flame after recently destroying a massive monster with a single lightning strike. She teases him, asking if he is too afraid of failure to use the magic formula she has already engraved on his body. Annoyed by her constant nagging, Kai accidentally answers her out loud and clearly says her name. Hearing the demonic name, Kagami looks at him with obvious suspicion. Realizing his grave mistake, he desperately tries to hide it, eagerly asking how to master the fire technique himself. Kagami tells the boy, wait for her to bring a special manual for learning jujitsu. She'll show you a text called The Book of Art, then explains that he doesn't actually have one. To read it, simply touching the cover transfers the magical formula directly into his body. After that, he must rely on rigorous mental imagery training to activate the spell. She warns that the process is extremely difficult, adding that without a natural aptitude for a particular technique, it may never work, no matter how much effort one puts in. Remembering how Duma once forced the formula into him, Kai realizes that this is a normal way of learning. Sees this as a great opportunity to make an impression. Demon. He touches the book and immediately feels magical knowledge flowing into him. Kagami explains that this formula is meant to create the same glowing effect as the fireflies she showed earlier. Confident and eager to prove his talent, Kai demonstrates his abilities with his hand and firmly orders to light the fire. But nothing happens. Duma bursts out laughing, cruelly mocking his own failed attempt at showing off. Deeply embarrassed, Kai asks his instructor for a trick that could help him. However, even after hours of repeating the same jujitsu technique, his palm remains completely empty. Fire. Tired and impatient, he interrupts Kagami when she tries to finish the lesson. He stubbornly refuses to stop, despite fears that he may not have any magical talent at all. Seeing his disappointment, Kagami gently encourages him. She explains that mastering the first technique takes time for anyone, especially a child host. Depending on the complexity of the spell, it can take days, weeks, or even months. Surprised by the realistic time frame, Kai realizes that a few hours of training mean virtually nothing in the grand scheme of things, and immediately regains his fiery determination to train harder, refusing to accept a delay of several months. Kai insists on mastering this technique immediately. Thanking Kagami for the helpful advice, he politely invites her to go home so he can continue training alone until late at night. Suddenly, Kagami loses control. Pushed to her limits, she angrily tells him to stop pretending to be a normal, polite student. Still traumatized by the deep emotional wound, she confesses that every carrier child she taught before treated people like disposable toys. He cruelly tormented and hurt her, calling it training. Expecting the same abuse, she bitterly accuses him of orchestrating a twisted prank to break her. Shocked by her painful confession, Kai vehemently denies the accusation. He assures her that his mind is not taken over. He then explains the real reason why he wants to train. He says that his parents' constant love and protection seems like a real miracle to him. Because of this, he is terribly afraid of losing them someday. Driven by fear of a repeat of past tragedies, he vows to become strong enough to protect his family. Meeting the gaze of his frightened instructor, he sincerely promises to protect him. She is also protected from any unjust evil. At this point, Duma appears and jokingly asks if she is one of these evils. Ignoring the remark, she notes that mastering the basics of jujitsu should not take him so long. She hints at the secret of his strength, telling him to clearly remember the very feeling he experienced when he fought off her demonic influence. And when he unleashed that devastating lightning bolt a few days ago, Kai suddenly realized that his magic was fueled by his strong desire to protect others. Thanking Duma for his valuable advice, he asks his instructor to watch closely. Having embedded his protective vow into the magic formula, he confidently commands the firefly to activate. In an instant, a bright flame flares up inside it. Palm. Seeing him safely and successfully use fire art, Kagami is speechless and stunned. She watches in disbelief as the young boy masters jujitsu techniques in just a few hours. After carefully examining the bright flame, she realizes that there is no trace of demonic dark magic in it. Instead, she senses a familiar, pure energy emanating from the the fire. She's shocked to recognize it as light magic, an extremely rare phenomenon that only occurs once every few centuries, even among the 7 great families of exorcists, and the only known force capable of directly opposing darkness. A year passes, and 5-year-old Kai gradually develops his magical abilities under the careful guidance of Kagami. During sparring, he successfully performs a technique performed in water, earned praise from his mentor for his precise control of movements. Suddenly, Duma telepathically intrudes into his thoughts, loudly noting his unusually gloomy face. Frightened by the voice in his head, he quickly apologizes and goes off to a quiet corner for a moment. Away from his instructor, Duma complains that his constant bad mood is ruining the fun of trying to get hold of him. Kai nervously shares his experiences with her, admitting that, despite studying several techniques of spiritualism over the past year, he feels stuck. He fears that none of his current techniques can match the power of the first lightning art he ever used. Remembering Kagami's warning earlier that he needs to break through her defenses to survive in a real fight, he seriously doubts whether he will be able to protect his family. The source of his tormenting anxiety lies in his past life, where his parents died shortly after he was 6 years old. They fear that the same fate will befall them in this world. He is under unbearable pressure as the 1-year deadline approaches. The Duma mocks the worries that are too heavy for a child. She notes that the greatest exorcist in history mastered his first art only at the age of 4 years and 7 months. This means that Kai is already in an incredibly privileged position. To begin, changing the subject, Duma reminds him that today is his 5th birthday. He jokingly asks him not to spoil the mood of everyone who worked hard on preparations. Taking her words seriously, Kai returns home and opens the door. He is immediately greeted by a joyful explosion of firecrackers. Akihiko and his mother happily congratulate him on his birthday. Surrounded by his family, Kai examines the delicious birthday cake. Despite their cheerful efforts, he secretly struggles to feel the holiday spirit. However, Duma immediately pulls him out of his dark thoughts, impatiently offering him a bite. He remembers how violent her reaction was when he first tried the sweets last year. Yielding to her insistence, he takes a bite, plunging the demoness into a state of blissful levitation. Noticing that there was still some sadness left in him, she scolded him sharply. He said the fear of losing the future was blinding to the precious moments already before him. At that moment, his mother brings in a special homemade dish, a cute teddy bear-shaped rice omelet. Seeing a slightly uneven but lovingly prepared dish, Kai remembers his past life. His ex-mother was always too busy with work to cook, so his grandmother usually took care of his meals, except on his birthday. Touched by the care his new mother put into preparing the dish, his gloomy mood disappears completely. He begins to eat with appetite. He devoured the delicious food so quickly that he nearly choked. Amused by his insatiable appetite, Akihiko chuckled knowingly. Meanwhile, Kagami quickly pours him a soothing cup of hot tea. Mayumi offers Kagami her sincere apologies for not noticing her sooner. Kagami politely declines this, pleased, help deliver the food as it arrived without a gift. Akihiko then joins the conversation to express his sincere gratitude for her continued dedication. He explains that because Kai is a dangerous child carrier, he is kept in strict isolation from the outside world. Therefore, her presence and communication are of utmost importance to her. Kagami sincerely promises to continue to look after her. Their conversation is pleasantly interrupted by the cries of Kai's younger sister, Meguru. Kai eagerly moves to hug her. He looks down as her tiny hands reach out to him. His face reflected painful regrets for his past life. After the death of his parents, he and his sister grew distant and argued frequently. But now, smiling at Meguru, he vows to change the future and become a real, loving brother this time around. The cheerful atmosphere is broken when Mayumi suddenly collapses. Akihiko hurries to his wife. She weakly says that she feels suddenly dizzy and anemic, secretly sensing that there was something far more sinister behind this. Kagami immediately convinces him to take her to the hospital immediately, just in case. She offers to stay and look after the children while he is away, and he quickly agrees. Meanwhile, a secret spy reports to their master, confirming that Kai and Meguru are now alone in the family dojo, with no servants nearby. Hearing this, the mysterious man grinned, pleased that his sinister plan was being realized exactly as planned. On the other end of the secret phone call, the spy confirms that the drug Mayumi took worked perfectly, causing only the intended temporary dizziness. The mysterious man laughs and coldly declares that he wouldn't care even if it were a deadly poison. He declares that the Shirakami family does not deserve a moment of happiness and prepares to leave there immediately. After the conversation ends, the action returns to the dojo, and it turns out that the traitorous informant is actually Kagami. Left alone with the children, she completely loses her kind facade. She whispers that the time has finally come for the family to experience the same crushing despair she felt all all those years ago and vows to make them understand her pain. Inside the dojo, Kai gently encourages his little sister Megura to crawl towards him. As she stumbles awkwardly and starts crying, Duma appears and notices how innocent the little girl is. She jokes that Kai didn't have such innocence as a baby, teasing him for always wearing the stern, serious face of a monk. Kai responds defensively, blaming the demon for the constant attempts at possession that made him so tense as an infant. However, he soon realizes that she is only making fun of him to distract him from his worries about his mother's sudden illness, and he sincerely thanks her for the necessary support. Duma brushes off his gratitude and abruptly turns the conversation to their current problem. She warns Kai that she's felt something is wrong with Kagami for some time now, pointing out that the instructor's behavior had become downright suspicious since they were left alone. The demon comes to the conclusion that Kagami is hiding dark, hidden motives, and suspects that the sudden medical emergency that has left them isolated was deliberately orchestrated. While Kai takes this dire warning, he calls out to Meguru, trying to stop her from crawling. In the distance, suddenly, the heavy gates of the dojo swing open with an ominous sound. As the doors swing open, an elderly man steps inside. Kai instinctively hugs Megura tightly, feeling an uneasy sense of recognition upon seeing the intruder's face. Ignoring the children, the man praises the instructor for her flawless execution of the plan and addresses her as Kagami. Her kindly, teacher-like demeanor immediately disappears as she bows respectfully and formally acknowledges him as Lord Akaika. Confused by the sudden betrayal and the familiar name, Kai demands to know who this stranger is. Akaika completely ignores the boy's confusion. Instead, he openly states that his spy told him of the child's unprecedented condition, admitting his disbelief that the boy somehow managed to evade Duma's capture. Upon hearing of his deepest secret being revealed, Kai freezes in shock, desperately wondering how this dangerous intruder knows about the demon god sealed within him. Taking a closer look at the man, Kai suddenly realizes that it is Akaika, an elder from one of the 7 great families of exorcists who was present on his birthday. Without the slightest hesitation, this ruthless man declares that the boy must be eliminated. Duma screams desperately, demanding from the child, step back, just as the elder releases a powerful blast of energy. Kagami threw Kai across the room with all her might. Following her employer's orders, she also went on the offensive. The sudden betrayal of a teacher whom the young boy trusted left him completely confused and devastated. In the midst of the chaos, little Meguru begins to cry and crawls towards her injured brother. Realizing that staying near her will only put the baby in danger, Kai tries to move away from her. However, to his horror, Akaika mercilessly aims at the crying baby. Desperate to save her, the young boy instantly envelopes his sister in a protective fire spell. Just as the elder unleashes a destructive firestorm, the dojo windows shatter. When the thick smoke clears, a boy is seen protecting a baby lying beneath his battered body. Unmoved by the boy's brave defense, the cruel old man threatens to kill them both at once. Duma, in despair, orders Kai to stand up, warning that another direct hit would be completely fatal. Frozen in horror at the memory of his sudden and senseless death in a past life, his body refuses to obey, no matter how hard he forces himself to move. Just as the elder prepares to deliver the killing blow, Kagami suddenly stands before them. She resolutely interrogates her employer, warning that the killing of the children goes far beyond their original purpose, which was simply to assess the boy's condition. Unwilling to back down, Kagami openly reveals her true feelings to her employer. She admits that, observing Kai for the past year, she has constantly struggled with her own trauma, again and again forcing himself to see in the boy a monstrous vessel in which Duma was imprisoned. However, she firmly states that she can no longer deny the truth. She notes that not a single disaster has occurred since the boy's birth, insisting that he is not a dangerous heretic, but she was a surprisingly kind and humble child. Unlike the horrific child carriers from her past, she declares that this boy may be an unprecedented savior. Aki listens to her emotional justifications with a cold, dismissive smirk, showing no interest in her sentimental reasoning and declaring that he no longer cares who this guy really is. The ruthless elder immediately unleashes a huge fiery whirlwind upon the world. Kagami desperately tries to stop the attack with a water technique, but her defense is too weak, overcoming the waterfall barrier. In the blink of an eye, Aki delivers a brutal punch to her face, causing her to fall hard to the floor. Horrified that his beloved mentor has been knocked down, Kai screams her name and desperately rushes towards her. Completely untouched by the boy's grief, Aki gathers her immense magical energy and casts a devastating fire spell. At that moment, a terrifying ring of fire erupts and begins to spin wildly around the room. The elder coldly threatens to burn the traitorous teacher along with the children. Aki mercilessly declares Kai a dangerous heretic and Kagami a traitor, declaring that both should be reduced to ashes. He unleashes a terrifying terrifying hellfire technique, which leads to dangerous growth of the flame. Realizing the mortal threat, Kagami boldly stands before the young boy and uses a water volley technique, launching water balls to intercept the raging flames. Unimpressed, the cruel old man mocks her attempt, reminding her that she's only a second-class exorcist. Despite possessing the overwhelming power of a fourth-class exorcist and being the head of his family, which makes her resistance completely useless. Before she can respond, Aki binds her hands using the burning wax binding technique. Remembering her submissive behavior during training, he sadistically mocks her and treats her like a real sandbag, delivering a series of brutal blows. Trembling in fear and holding Meguru tightly, Kai desperately pleads with the elder. Stop, he pleads, saying that if this man only wants to kill the cursed child vessel, then taking its life should be enough, urging him to spare his innocent instructor. Aki bursts into a sinister laugh and reveals his true, twisted motive. He openly admits that the boy's status as a surrogate child and the threat of an evil spirit are merely convenient pretexts. His true goal is to cruelly punish the boy's father, Akihiko. The elder admits that he harbors a deep, petty grudge because Akihiko married Mayumi, the woman Akiki intended to claim as his wife. Consumed by furious jealousy, he had hoped with glee that the fatal curse associated with bearing a host child would kill Mayumi, and he was enraged that she had somehow managed to survive. Consumed by insane envy, Akiki bitterly complains about the injustice towards his rival, Akihiko. We got everything. Mayumi as a wonderful wife, a loving family, and an extraordinary talent without losing anything. In response, convinced that his twisted reasoning justified the appropriation of at least one of his rival's most valuable treasures, the elder uses a fire prison technique on the boy. Reacting immediately, Akihiko uses a water art technique to block the blow. Attack, but its overwhelming force throws him back with great force. Irritated by the resistance and outraged by what he sees as the ineffective use of the Duma's power, Akiki finally loses his patience. Abandoning his original plan to slowly torture them, he begins to gather a huge mass of fiery energy, planning to burn them all. Immediately, as the heat intensifies, Akihiko becomes paralyzed again, due to lingering trauma related to his death in a past life. His body completely shrinks in fear. Sensing his helpless panic, Duma mentally approaches him with a tempting offer. She promises that if he completely surrenders his body to her demonic control, she can easily turn the old man into ashes. A moment, hearing Meguru's frightened cries, and Kagami weakly begged him to run away. Kai seriously considers the demoness offer. He knows she's telling the truth and could put an end to the nightmare once and for all. However, ultimately he refuses. He explains that he is afraid not only that she might steal his body forever, but he also understands that the demon will eventually leave him if he now depends on her power. Instead of overcoming his own trauma, he will never be strong enough to protect his parents alone. Gathering his courage, Kai forces himself to stand up and face his paralyzing fear. Kaika loudly ridicules the boy's bravery, calling it a pathetic bluff, sadistically claiming that his visible horror would make his gruesome death even more amusing, screaming that he and his absent opponent were finally equal. The elder unleashes his destructive, mighty hellfire upon the world. Unwilling to allow his family to be destroyed, Kai fiercely confronts the oncoming fire. To the villain's utter amazement, the young boy miraculously activates a divine demon exorcism technique known as Hakujutsu, forming a shining wall of pure light that completely blocks the raging flames. Looking at the glowing barrier, Kai recalls a previous lesson where Kagami explained Hakujutsu. She said it was an advanced technique that allowed the user to physically shape their own soul. Using the mana contained within them, they create weapons unique to each of them. However, since the created form becomes permanent, users cannot force it to awaken. Instead, they must wait for their true feelings and the essence of their soul to awaken. The soul naturally directs this. Returning to the present, Akaika is amazed that an ordinary child could manifest such a complex divine technique. What was even more shocking was that he felt an unfamiliar energy emanating from the barrier. Lying wounded on the floor, Kagami smiled triumphantly. She realized that the elder had finally noticed that the boy's Hakujutsu wasn't one of the standard 5 elements. In fact, it is a legendary property of light, a miraculous power that opposes darkness and once belonged to a great hero of the past. After examining his newly formed spiritual weapon, Kai realizes that it is merely a giant wall of light. Duma bursts into hysterical laughter, mercilessly ridiculing him for displaying such a primitive defensive ability fit only for a minor character. Kai angrily orders the demon to be quiet, though he secretly agrees that a simple wall lacks any dramatic appeal. Seeing his confusion, Kagami warmly praises the shield, explaining that its sturdy form perfectly reflects his deep and unwavering desire to protect those he loves. Touched by her words, he respectfully calls her his teacher and thanks her. Ashamed of her betrayal, she says she no longer deserves that title. But Kai insists she still thinks so. He confidently asks her to watch him demonstrate the real results of her training. Enraged by their touching conversation, Ikake snorts loudly and warns the boy not to become arrogant just because he's awakened his soul technique. Duma smugly remarks that it's actual combat experience that separates life from death. Frustrated at being unable to break through the light barrier, Ikake unleashes another fire attack. It is foolish to think that Hakajutsu can only protect from one direction. Trying to take advantage of this perceived weakness, the elder quickly rushes to the boy's blind spot and delivers a powerful blow. To his complete shock, he crashes hard into another invisible barrier and collapsed to the floor. Ikake jumped back in panic and immediately crashed into another wall. Quickly realizes that Kai has easily trapped him in a completely inescapable cylindrical soul prison. Duma laughs at the villain's panic, ridiculing his foolish belief that a wall can only be used for defense when a little imagination and she will turn it into the perfect cage. In despair and horror, Ikake watches in horror as Kai walks. He raised his fist and advanced on him. The cowardly elder desperately tried to rely on his political status, warning, "Boy, attacking the head of his family will make him an enemy of all the world's nobility." Ignoring political threats, Kai strikes hard. He stuns the villain and knocks him out. He casually ignores the warning, joking that no one expects rational behavior from a 5-year-old anyway. Observing the stunning result, Kagami proudly praises her student. She notes that Kai perfectly utilized the lightning technique to strengthen his body for the final blow, thus proving the value of his rigorous physical training. She, filled with admiration, warmly declares that he is no longer just a cursed child vessel, but a true exorcist. She is absolutely confident that he will grow into a person who will exceed all her expectations. Meanwhile, in an unknown location, a mysterious young girl sits silently on the sofa. The woman standing at the window tells her about Kai, warning the girl in advance that he will arrive soon. The woman explains that the boy, like her, is a progenitor child, which predetermines their inevitable meeting. After a fierce battle, Kai returns to his normal training and tries to quietly meditate in a room full of other children. However, the deeply bored Duma deliberately pesters him to provoke a reaction. Pushed to his limits, the young boy accidentally yells at the demon loudly. Suspecting the cursed child carrier is dangerously losing control, a nearby teacher rushes toward him in panic. The teacher nervously apologizes and urges him to take his time. Surprised by the adult's fear, Doma asks why the boy isn't angry about being unfairly kept in this facility, leaving Kai in silent bewilderment. Meanwhile, in the organization Spiritual Tribunal, Akihiko angrily argues with a high-ranking judge named Kurikawa. He demands to know why his son was given a strict suspended sentence when it's clear he was the victim of an assassination attempt. Kurikawa calmly explains that Akihiko completely falsified his testimony. He falsely claimed that a 5-year-old boy had aggressively attacked him using the demonic power of Duma. Although Kagami testified honestly in defense of the boy, the judge admits that the elder's petty jealousy as a motive is too vulgar and disgusting for the official council to believe it. Although Kurikawa denies the official testimony, he privately tells Akihiko that he secretly hopes that Kagami is right in claiming the boy is a miraculous savior. He notes that Japan has not experienced a major disaster since the child's birth 5 years ago, and the judge sincerely believes in his unprecedented potential. However, being bound by the strict laws of the tribunal, he categorically refuses to overturn the council's legal decision. Back in the detention center, Duma dismisses the political injustice with indifference. She tells Kai that, although he's officially under house arrest, being able to move freely across a vast territory is still a considerable blessing. After agreeing to house arrest at the Jakugo Institute, Kai realizes that the staff grant him freedom mainly because they fear him. His 6th birthday, the same age at which his parents died in his past life, is rapidly approaching. He decides to use his remaining time wisely. Suddenly, a sharp voice interrupts his thoughts. He watches in disgust as a cruel instructor named Hyudu brutally beats a young girl named Aim Ginzan with a wooden stick, falsely accusing her of being disobedient. Even when another instructor begs him to stop, the aggressive man refuses to restrain himself. Kai was disgusted by what he saw and desperately wanted to intervene, but he remembers his father's stern warning. Akihiko told him to behave well and leave the institute as soon as possible. Perhaps, most importantly, he was forbidden from using his light magic, since his official mana capacity was recorded as 0. Revealing his true power would immediately expose him as a dangerous heretic. Frustrated by these limitations, Kai feels powerless, until Duma, in anger, declares that he will kill the annoying instructor with a death curse. Spotting a clever loophole, Kai stops the demon from killing him, but agrees to use his terrifying power to scare him, since his father had only banned his own exorcism magic, using his known status as a cursed cursed child, the leakage of demonic mana can be explained naturally. For the first time, he voluntarily releases Doma's mana, carefully maintaining its flow at a thin trickle. Imagining a barely dripping faucet, he is extremely focused to prevent the demon god from taking over his mind. Meanwhile, Yudu continues his brutal attack, furious that the young girl dared to contradict him. Just as he raises his stick to strike her, and again the terrifying pressure throws him back with force. The cruel instructor looks helplessly into the distance in horror. Created from a mere stream of demonic mana, a huge, ominous gate bound with heavy iron chains suddenly rises before him, causing the cruel man to freeze in fear. Yudu screams in terror, desperately pointing at the massive, chained gate and demanding to know when it appeared. The other instructor is completely confused, stares into space and says there is nothing there. Paralyzed with fear, the cruel man claims that something sinister is directed at him. He screamed that he could hear it frantically trying to break free from behind the iron doors. Ignoring it, a colleague's confused attempts to calm him down. He falls, staggers back, and in panic, cowardly runs away from the scene, leaving the rest of the students completely bewildered. Watching the bully run away, Duma snorts contemptuously and complains about how ridiculously fragile her victim's psyche is. Kai is genuinely impressed, praising the demon god for such a useful and accurate curse that only affects one target without drawing the attention of others. Unaccustomed to sincere gratitude, Duma is visibly embarrassed. Calling him an impudent little brat, she quickly disappears to hide her unexpected embarrassment. Kai, relieved that the curse didn't cause much of a stir, believes he managed to avoid attracting any unwanted attention. However, his relief turns to disappointment when he suddenly notices Aim Ginzan sitting right next to him, staring at him. Struck by her silent closeness, he wonders anxiously if she somehow sensed a demonic aura. He decides to keep a strict distance from her. Unfortunately, his plan fails the very next day when the gym instructor randomly brings Kai and Aim together in a mandatory game, kickball. Outside, in the garden, physical education instructors announce a simple kickball warm-up. As the only two children left without partners, Kai and Aim Ginzan are forced into an awkward situation to team up. Trying to be polite, she apologizes in advance for her alleged lack of competence, masterfully executes the shot, and then gently kicks the ball towards him. However, the ball rushes forward with incredible superhuman speed, literally flying, rushed past him and crashed into the nearest tree with a loud crash. Stunned by the force of the blow, Kai realizes she has no chance as an untrained amateur. Determined to complete the exercise without any problems, he easily bats the ball away, hoping her first strike was just a fluke. Instead, Aim returns it with the same terrifying force. Realizing that she is a highly skilled fighter, Kai relies on the rigorous physical training he received under Kagami. Two children engage in a tense, lightning-fast game, passing the ball to each other with incredible force, while panic-stricken instructors try to find a safe way to stop them. Later in the dining room, Kai eats his food with pleasure, while casually ignoring the Duma's persistent requests to try. Despite the delicious food, he notices that other children are deliberately avoiding his table. He suspects his isolation is caused by his dreaded status as a carrier child, made even more apparent by his unusual athletic activity during warm-up. Suddenly, Aim breaks his solitude, comes over, and asks to sit next to him. Caught off guard by the awkward moment, Kai nervously searches for an appropriate topic to lighten the mood. Before he can say anything, she gets straight to the point. Looking him straight in the eye, she asks him point-blank if he's the surrogate child who carries the legendary demon god within him. Duma. Aim asks directly whether Kai is currently possessed by a demon god or if he is actually Duma in human form. Kai gives an evasive answer, trying to avoid the question, confused by her fearless curiosity. Apologizing for the strange interrogation, she reveals a shocking truth. She is also a vessel, the child. She explains that, having recently turned 7, her role has officially ended. The snow demon within her has gone into hibernation and has been safely extracted from her body. Hearing this, Kai realizes that the Jakugo Institute, in fact, it is a probation center for former children who were on board ships. The Duma is dismissive of the suspended sentence idea, arguing that staff abuse stems from deep and irrational prejudices. She explains that former child carriers are cruelly branded as former fiends, and are subjected to cruel discrimination for the destruction they caused while possessed. Even though they sacrifice their childhood to appease the spirit's wrath, Kai understands that Aim has endured this unfair hatred for years. He feels a strong kinship with her and decides to better understand her pain. Aim reaches him and reveals that the spirit possessing her was a beautiful snow demon named Asane. Duma immediately recognized this name, proudly explaining that this powerful ice spirit is a legendary member of Japan's revered 8 Pillars. Their connection is suddenly interrupted when instructors at the training facility ask them to finish their meals and hurry to their afternoon class. classes. However, when Kai looks at the teachers, he senses something strange and notices that the cruel instructor, Hugh-do, is suspiciously absent. The children are unaware that this cruel man is hiding just outside the cafeteria doors. Shrouded in a terrifying dark energy, he mutters Asane's name obsessively, furiously whispering that the snow demon belongs to him.